Blana's
Yeah, I'm going
white
to try
paper.
and keep this short and sweet
right.
and get us out of here in 15 minutes if I can. Okay, so previously I presented this two-step plan. It was a white paper, and the city council said, bring it back with some numbers, so I'm back. What I'd like to do is, the one part of this two-step plan is considering creating an open space preservation fund, and then the other part of it had to do with creating either a position for grant writer or a consulting relationship with a grant writing company to specifically look for money for parks and open space land. So rather than go back and bring that whole thing back up and discuss it ad nauseum, I've got two ideas for how to fund it, which is really the critical issue today. If we go along with the idea of getting rid of the Fleet and Facilities Department and freeing up that salary, which runs between $80,000 and $102,000 for the director, and freezing those three vehicles, which runs to $126,000. What I'd like to propose is using the $80,000 to $100,000 money to bring in a consulting firm for, rather than hire an FTE, we'll have a contract for a consulting firm specifically designed to look for grants for parkland and open space, and it'll be a one-year, one-time only allocation of between 80 and 100,000. For the starting the open space preservation fund, I would suggest we take the 126,000 from the vehicles and we seed that fund with that initial contribution, and then we go to the Parks and Rec we go to the Marco Island Community Parks Foundation and we see if they can at least match that or bring that number up to $429,000, which will allow us to buy the property at 507 Inlet. And that was why I wanted to talk about that property at 507 Inlet and just, talk about its value. We already, as a committee, agreed that that property was worth preserving. We recommended that to Conservation Collier. They put it on their A list. It went all the way to the discussion, and they came back with a second offer, which was lower than the initial appraisal. So we decided to come up with the extra 10,000, and the BCC denied the whole sale. So what I'm looking at and and we got a letter of support that's attached to this agenda from the Beach and Coastal Resources Advisory Committee. The reason I'm bringing it up today is because that's a capital request from an advisory committee. First time we ever had it, right? So I want to honor their request and discuss it and say, would that be something that we would be willing to explore? And I just pieced out the funding. If you want, I can talk a little bit about the value of that parcel and how it fits into a broader scheme, or we can just start the discussion on the funding.
Why don't we just go back to the county and tell them that the seller will take $419,000?
No, she won't.
And us cut a check directly to the seller for $10,000 as a fee for donation or whatever you want to call it.
I tell you why I don't think that's going to work. I think there's such ill will right now between the BCC, Conservation Collier, and this property that I don't think they'll reconsider it. Even though they put it on the A list, I think if we try and bring it back before them, they're going to say, no, we already dealt with this.
And we tried to lobby the councilors, the commissioners.
We have.
Individually.
I have. I don't know if anybody else has. And I just don't get the sentiment, Eric, that that's going to happen. Now, here's something I thought might work.
I think it could happen, Rich.
Here's an option. If we were able to raise the money and buy the land and then put it up for acquisition by Conservation Collier saying, listen, we own this property now, we'll take less than $429. I think they might consider that. So we would get some of it back. Let's say we buy it from this woman for $429. We offer it back to Conservation Collier and we say, you know what, we'll meet you halfway. If you will acquire it from us now for $229, we'll put that money back into our general fund. I mean, just as a possible way to fund it.
Really appreciate your optimistic outlook on that. As I think once the city, if the city were ever to acquire that property, Conservation Colony, well, good luck with it.
Yeah.
You're not going to develop it, and if you do, then, you know, that's going to be a big problem.
So-
Now, here's my question. Is that property, is that parcel actually developable?
That's what
Let me go to my PowerPoint. I just want to go to one slide to show you where I think it's value. Can you bring up the PowerPoint, Martin? And we're going to jump ahead because I knew we were going to run out of time this is going to happen, but such is life. Okay, so if we back up, this is what I'm calling the nature highway, right? And it goes from the north, which is up here by Publix with the 3 parcels we just acquired, the Annecy Barfield parcels, and it goes all the way down here to Otter Mound. This is our brand new multi-use path. It's just a beautiful way to get from point A to point B. Now, what's in the middle is that property. So if we acquire this property as part of this deal, we're going to now have this incredible natural highway for our residents to view all these creatures. Let me jump ahead. Okay, this is Annecy Barfield. That's Otter Mound. In the middle lies the property that we're talking about. This is the Whisk property that was available for $429. This property right here is currently being reviewed by Conservation Collier for acquisition. And this property, the only reason I didn't get this proposal to you folks earlier is this property is owned by the family of property A. So Mrs. Reed, who's 92 years old, is going to donate this property to Audubon Society to preserve it in perpetuity. I could not bring that fact up until she agreed to make it public. She's made it public. Her daughter and her other children own this property under their own corporation called the Whisk Property LLC. They bought it from Mom, and they are looking to sell it. It's part of their investment package. Now, what will happen is if we buy this property from them, it now opens up this close to 2-acre preserve here, which would greatly motivate Conservation Collier to go ahead with this deal and buy this. And that would give us a combined almost 3-acre little parcel at the junction of Inlet and South Barfield, which houses about 300 gopher tortoises, innumerable other species, high hammock habitat. And this woman, Mrs. Reed, has built this system of trails, this incredible lush habitat that if it would be combined with this, it would be really special. It would be like another Otter Mound, and it would be right in the middle of the nature highway, which I think is a real good marketing
But
slogan.
as a developed property, if somebody was going to develop that property, it wouldn't be worth anywhere close to $429,000.
Well, maybe we should consider making an offer then. I mean, what my point is, I would like to get a commitment from this council to say, you know what, that's valuable enough to preserve, especially looking at it in light of the fact that it's going to back up to this other incredible property, which, again, it's very rare, and it's unique in that it's prime habitat for gopher tortoises and owls.
Rich, do you know the size of Plot A there?
Yeah, Plot A is about, I think, 0.7 acres.
80 by, you know, the width by.
Oh, I would standard building lot 80 by 110 probably, maybe a little wider than that. It looks, and
An estate lot,
and this one is bigger.
And landlocked.
I mean, inland lots by the school and stuff are not cheap anymore. I mean, it's probably worth, I hate to say it, I think it's worth more than you think. I'll leave it at that.
I mean, it is an asset that if we
Well,
acquired.
It does cost money to get tortoises removed.
Sure. Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
Not, for a buyer, they would
Right.
have to consider the cost to get tortoises removed, then the permitting for that.
Is that property on the market?
No, and it hasn't been reappraised, but she said she would be willing to go with that $429, that price.
Seems like all the ingredients are there. They can't get together with Conserve Collier. What's the budding head
It's,
stages?
you know, from my observation of it, it's human beings now not wanting to interact with each other for reasons other than objective scientific reality, if I can put it any other way. People get attitudes and they just don't want to work together anymore.
I mean, what concerns me about it is our citizens and the citizens of Collier County are pouring millions of dollars into Conservation
Sure.
Collier, already every single year. And they have tens of millions of dollars that they're sitting on in Conservation Collier, which is part of the reason why the county commission took the action that they took in the last budget cycle related to Conservation Collier, because there's so much money there and they're not spending it.
Yeah.
You know, so here's an opportunity, and they refused to throw in an extra $10,000. They had to come, like, essentially beg to Marco Island to give them another $10,000. You know, and then they said, "Well, no thanks, we don't want to do that anyway." You know, I mean, the whole process is poison to a certain extent, and it's certainly not because of your efforts, because you've done a great job, you know, moving all of these items forward with the county commission and with Conservation Collier, and doing a ton of legwork and due diligence on all of that. So, I mean, you've done a great job with it. It's just, at this point now, to try and, first off, I mean, we spent 45 minutes trying to figure out $10,000 from reserves for the trees, and then to try to find $420,000. And you know, what upsets me about it is this parcel owners had $419,000 on the table 9 months ago, and they said no. And so, you know, to me, if
Yeah.
that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and then we all agreed, partially due to your advocacy, is, well, let's take that $10,000 difference and say, hey, well, the city will kick it in separately, go back to the county, and then the county said no. And it's like, okay, but what are you doing with the millions of dollars that you've got from our citizens' tax dollars that they voted on, you know, because they did support Conservation Collier.
Right.
You know, unlike the sales tax, which was like razor thin, but in the negative for Marco Island. But, you know, here's something that the voters did support, and that money's there, and they're not utilizing, or they're utilizing it to buy parcels in the middle of nowhere in the Everglades that are impossible to develop.
Well, one of the reasons I brought this up, because at the very end, I posed two possible solutions for acquisition. One is that we just pull the money from our own reserves and buy it, or two is we go to the Parks Foundation. And that's why I asked you, Eric, a couple of months ago, does the Parks Foundation's generosity extend beyond just Veterans Park to acquire?
Yeah, but it
park land?
requires,
Yes.
it goes for parks, not for,
Is it semantics that this is not a park, it's this open space? I mean,
yeah, it's open space.
but as our residents walk by it on inlet and they look out at all these creatures and everything,
They can
isn't
do
it?
that now.
But it could be sold now. Yeah, I don't know.
Let me ask you something. So
Sure.
this is one of the items. The other item you had was the grant writer.
The grant writer. You want to start with that? That's the easy one. Let's
Well,
take the
I don't know
money.
if it's the easy one, but it seems like maybe there's an impasse here related to this parcel A.
Yeah,
Grant writer one, maybe there's an opportunity there due to
okay.
some of the operational items that the city manager is going to bring to us at the next meeting.
And again, I know this is an operating expense and not a capital expense, the grant writer, but they're all intertwined. Even this, you know, this nature highway thing I put together to show you the value of the property and then to show you where we could repurpose that position of the director of fleet and facilities. That's why I packaged it together. But to get back to the Parks Foundation, is there any way that you see, Eric, where the Parks Foundation could?
Well, first of all, the money that currently exists, which is from the donor, and that's the only donor we've had other than a few of us who have funded some internal projects like marketing and that sort of thing, is for programming.
Gotcha.
So we don't, if we had the money, I'd be happy to sit down and say, yeah, we've got money, but we don't have money for that.
Could you open it up for potential donations for?
We have it, right now I'm working with a company called B Squared up in Naples on a marketing program that will target people who have large required minimum distributions from IRAs. And the IRS says that you can give $100,000 of your required minimum distribution to charity every year. And there are some people with significant money, and so I want to target those people and either direct mail them or do some kind of a program pitching the Parks Foundation and But what I had in mind was things like the gymnasium
Yeah,
and,
amazing, yeah.
and tents that they need over there to protect the kids from the sun. And that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Could we see if there's public comment on this? Because I know at least one person from.
Well, once we close this item on
Yeah.
the agenda, which is item 3, there's item 4, which is public comment. So if we're done talking about this as a council, then we can close the business and then go to public comment after the city.
But we couldn't then come back to make a decision on this after that.
Uh,
Is there anyone signed up for this particular item?
No.
No.
There's a general public comment, which they may have signed up for.
Gotcha.
So. Did you have something, Mr. Manager?
I did. I think there's one thing might be worth going back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Councilor Blunt, isn't it true that when this parcel was considered by the county commission the first time, it wasn't known that parcel B was going to be donated to the Audubon Society?
Absolutely, correct.
So that's new information.
Yes.
I think the fact that, and now with the potential interconnection with that parcel C, changes this question considerably in the context of the county. It raises the value of that parcel B considerably, or parcel A considerably, if it's now linked between those two other parcels that are likely to become public, or at least become preserved. So I think maybe this idea of running back at the county may have more merit than we thought, because that's new information. We knew, you knew that that was being considered, but that was not public. I think making another run at them, given the fact that that's just been made public, is probably worthwhile.
Rich,
All
I
right.
think, I think that's what, sorry, I think that's what you lead with, and Chair Grafoni has the right idea. There's a ton of money there. Marco needs its share. This seems like something that should be worked out. That should be our first lead is, it's an election year, county, step up, work this out. Everything else maybe is a secondary thought to that, but, and maybe you need us to help out, lobby the commissioners, a combined letter between the whole, but we should be helping you. You've been bearing the brunt of a lot of this, and I appreciate it. But that's, I think, the first step we should be going to.
I have a meeting tomorrow, actually, with the woman, Jamie Cook, who's in charge, who's above Conservation Collier. I will run this by her and see what she thinks, if it's worth bringing back. Can we make a decision on the grant writer, either?
That's operational.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah,
okay.
and I thought Mike had it on his plate to kind of give us his thoughts on that for the next round. I thought we had left that open, and I was going to come back for the operating budget.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Cool, thank you. All right, so we'll close business, and do we have